You know, for a long time, I considered not making this video. I thought it wasn't going to get a lot of views, no one was going to watch it, plus it's going to take forever for me to express how much I actually love this show, but the truth is that I do. I love this show, and I don't care if no one watches this video, because this video is literally just me expressing to the world why this is one of my favorite shows of all time, and how it has affected me personally. NBC's The West Wing is one of my favorite shows of all time, and it was a fairly respected show of its time. The show got several awards, including actor John Spencer, who is probably the best actor on the entire show. But what is it that makes West Wing such a wonderful show in my eye? I think you could say a lot of things: the awesome score, the unique camera work, the amazing strings of dialogue that sound complicated on paper but flow beautifully with the cast and the execution of it.
I gotta say, Sam, digging your heels in.
Who's talking?
Yeah, I understand.
Digging my heels in. Now, another word for that would be principal, right?
I'm just saying.
Leo's office.
What? It's happening.
These are all amazing parts of the show as a whole, but for me, the whole thing that always has me coming back to West Wing is its characters. In all of the shows that I have watched, I can think of a very few that have characters as interesting, engaging, and unique as the West Wing, which is impressive considering these are a bunch of people talking about politics, a very disinteresting subject. I mean, we've seen how politics can affect movies and TV shows badly. And not only that, but there are 8 central characters in this show, and more come and go on each season. Even the ones I don't like as much, but they're all stunning and they're all amazing and they all have great character growth. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down each character individually. We're going to talk about them and their role in the story, their importance, and how they affected me, and just so much more, because the characters in West Wing are the central focus of it. And without them, this show wouldn't be what it is today. But I'm not going to just focus on the characters. We're going to be talking about the writing, the characters, the music, and everything else that has made this show the phenomenon that it is. This is going to be a pretty long video, so buckle up, it's going to be a fun ride. Let's start with the writing. Aaron Sorkin, one of the lead writers and main creators of The West Wing, is the reason that this show is the way that it is. He is a great writer who actually had a history of writing political dramas before this show. He got a start when he wrote a movie called A Few Good Men on a cocktail napkins while he was working at a Broadway bar. He got really lucky, and a producer named David Brown was able to read the script and eventually turn this into the movie that we know called A Few Good Men. Aaron also wrote The American President and a few other movies before this. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up Aaron right now is because he has a history before and after The West Wing of writing brilliant dialogue for movies and TV shows. A Few Good Men, The Social Network, Steve Jobs, The American President, etc. Aaron is a brilliant writer, and without him, not only would this show not be as interesting or engaging, but wouldn't even exist. In all these movies that Aaron has written, he has one thing that he is pretty much known for at this point, and that is his witty dialogue. Aaron is really good at writing dialogue in fast, quick paces that is interesting and engaging at the same time.
Lieutenant Buckley, I'm a staff aide to General Barry. I understand you need to speak with me.
Yes, I do. So what are you doing here?
I'm an aide to
I heard you the first time. Where's the general?
The general sent me.
Well, I'm going to send you back.
Ma'am, if I could just know the
Is
exact
that Barry doing the morning shows?
I wouldn't know that, ma'am. That's usually...
I would know, and I do, and so do you, so cut the crap.
Ma'am...
He's going to go on TV and trash the president. That's going to be the last thing he does before he retires.
Once again, ma'am, it's not...
Lieutenant, he's going to trash the president.
You're going to see this all over the place with West Wing, and you can notice it in more, movies he's had since then. Like, if you've seen The Social Network, that movie is very much present on its dialogue and how Mark Zuckerberg talks in that show.
Sorry, my Prada's at the cleaners, along with my hoodie and my fuck you flip-flops, you pretentious douchebag.
This is just something that Aaron Sorkin is known for, and it's important to know in this show because this is a show where how characters talk is very important and very specific to what they need to do. So that's why we were talking about Aaron and the writing of the show, because Aaron is really good at creating these scenes that really help keep you in and engage in the show overall. And that's why I wanted to mention him here, because I think he's very important to this show. So now that we got writing out of the way, we are going to talk about the editing of this show. When I think of the editing for The West Wing, I usually think long. The editing in The West Wing is very well executed, and what I enjoy about it isn't the quick flashbacks that we get or the flashy editing, but the long takes. Long takes of a camera maneuvering through the West Wing as our main characters try to solve a problem. These takes are a staple in the show, and even when the show focuses on Josh and Santos outside of the White House, you can still see these long takes with these characters. I'm personally not as attached to them as I am seeing Sam and Josh walk through the halls of the White House, but it still gives me a reminiscent feeling that I enjoy. This part isn't very long, editing isn't a huge part of the show, but it is something I think is very valuable and that shouldn't be overlooked when discussing The West Wing, because I like it and I think it's part of the reason why the show is as good as it is. Now that we have the writing and the editing all out of the way, let's go into what this show is really all for. What this show is all about. The characters. The characters of The West Wing are what make this show what it is today. It is the foundation for this show. The actors and the writing collaborate together to make beautiful scenes that are just full of emotion. This is why I save the characters for last, because they are what hold this show together above everything else. The writing that Aaron did is what makes these characters as engaging and brilliant that they are, but the execution with such vigor from the cast of The West Wing brings this dialogue to life in a way that is truly astounding. So, let's get started. We're going to be talking about every major character in The West Wing, starting from, Margaret all the way ending with Josh. The show, though, has way too many characters to go over everything, so I'm going to be going over the ones who have a great impact on the show, or to me personally, but I will be going through some quick ones that I just want to talk about in a quick little blurb real quick. Going into it, Larry and Ed, two hilarious characters over the show that probably could have been explored a little bit more. I know the show has a lot of characters, but I still really like them. I think they were used pretty well throughout the show, and I kind of like how they just appear every now and then to give us a little, experience over the show. I really like it. Carol, she is a great character in the show that didn't get enough recognition in my opinion. She is one of those characters in the show that I think was squandered because she could have been just as good as Donna or Margaret. But instead, they kind of just used her for spelling jokes and stuff like that. That hurts a little bit, but I still like her. She still was pretty cool, and it was cool that she, lasted the whole show. Mallory is a great character who was very interesting with Sam for a while, but after, being nearly forgotten after season 1, I think it is safe to say that she didn't have a major role in the show, even though I did like her appearance at the end to give the president the Bartlett for America napkin. That was a very emotional moment. I thought they handled that pretty well. Deborah and Mrs. Lanningham are both very funny characters who offer great background to the president and how the White House works. I like them a lot, both, to be honest. I honestly was a bigger fan of Deborah just because I felt like she was a little more energetic. I did like Mrs. Lanningham, like more grandma personality, but Deborah was more of what I personally like. My only problem with Deborah is that, by the time she came into the show, they were more focusing on the new characters and Santos and Josh, so she didn't get her real due, in my opinion. Honestly, I never really liked Mandy. I always thought Mandy was just annoying, and I was very glad that she left and never came back to the show. Every time I rewatch the show, I still do not enjoy the scenes with her. Oh, except for the one panda scene with Toby. Yeah, that scene's great. All of the Bartlett children are okay. My favorite of the children is Eleanor because even for the lack of screen time that she gets, she has my favorite character growth of all the children. When you first see her, you can see that she and her father aren't as close as the other kids are with them, but when Zoe gets kidnapped and the family gets mad at Jed for how he contributed to it all, Eleanor is the only person who stands with her father. That was a good way to show that these two had really been working to fix the bond and that she was working towards that and he was too. The other daughter, Liz, I'm not as big of a fan of, to be honest. I feel like she's kind of just annoying, and I hate the husband. I think he's annoying. Doug, I think is his name. Yeah, Doug is stupid. I never really liked him, but I did kind of like him running for Congress, but the whole cheating thing was just annoying, and I'm glad I don't they're not in the show that much. Annabeth is really sweet and had a lot of potential to be a good member of the West Wing. I honestly just don't know why they didn't make her press secretary. The arc with Toby learning to be more confident in this role was pretty good, but after he learns, it should have just gone over to her. Like, maybe she just says, alright, now that you know it, alright, I'll take over the role. But instead, she kind of just becomes the press secretary for the First Lady, and I was a little sad because I felt like she earned a little more. So yeah, that kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Nancy McNally is amazing, and she's one of my favorite side characters in the show. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about her. I just think she's really cool. These sideline characters are important, even if I wasn't the biggest fan of them or didn't give them their full little thing. Just because, they help appreciate the characters we have currently, and I think that's very important in the show. You need characters to balance out other characters. So, with all the honorable mentions out of the way, let's start with the best part of the West Wing, its characters.
My friend Lynette from the President's Council on Physical Fitness. Remember her?
No.
She's the one where you say, "Who is that?" And I say, "That's my friend Lynette from the President's Council on Physical Fitness."
Hey.
Margaret is probably the one character in this show who I think I didn't like in the beginning, but loved by the end. Not kidding, Margaret was so compulsive and weird that it kind of annoyed me to cut away from people I liked, like Toby or Sam, just to cut to Margaret making jokes about muffins. That being said, she's unironically one of the funniest characters in the show. Margaret is a character who just wants to help her friends. She sees Leo as a father figure, and you can see the way she cares for him when his divorce papers come in, and Margaret's cute little quirks like organizing everything at the dinner table to her listening in on Leo's meetings is actually really funny, and it adds a lightness that feels appropriate to the show. I think a crucial thing to remember with this is that she doesn't do this too much. This humor is not like the humor that Josh or Toby bring. It is probably more reminiscent to Sam in the first season of the show than anything else. But it is a humor that works well in certain situations. For instance, after the president has been shot at the end of season 1, it turns out the president was supposed to sign a letter to the vice president into power. And right now he is under anesthesia, and Leo is trying to manage the White House when Margaret tells him this.
Can I just say something, for the future?
Yeah.
I can sign the president's name. I have his signature down pretty good.
You can sign the president's name?
Yeah.
On a document removing him from power and handing it to someone else?
Yeah. Or do you think the White House counsel would say that was a bad idea?
I think the White House counsel would say that's a coup d'etat.
I'd probably end up doing some time for that.
I would think.
This line, besides being hilarious, is doing two things at once. One, it adds levity to the episode. This episode has been very serious and tense and needs some lightness to it. It could be argued that a line like this could actually be harmful because it is a cheery joke in a dark circumstance. But the truth is, you need this levity for the episode because it has been serious the whole time. A little humor to lighten the mood is valuable because, first of all, let's face it, it's season 2. We know the president isn't gonna die, and they say several times that it is looking good. So there's no reason to act like he is going to die. We can treat this like the episode that it is, a character growth and story development episode. And during these two things, it is okay to introduce some humor to lighten the mood. And Margaret is a great vessel to do this with. Margaret is just a wholesome character who I enjoyed even after Leo stepped down as chief of staff, which actually surprised me. Leo and Margaret's interactions were very wholesome to me, and I was sad to see them go, but CJ and Margaret's interaction have their own kind of charm, and instead of a father-daughter vibe, you get a sister vibe, and it works just as well, even though Carol gets sidelined in the process.
Are you the unmitigated jackass who has the DNC choking off funding for the O'Dwyer campaign in the California 46th?
What in God's name is happening right now?
Joey Lucas is a hilarious character that was a great addition to the show. She is someone who adds a bit of levity to a cast that takes itself pretty seriously. When the show needs her to be serious, she does, but on the more lighthearted episodes, Joey is a source of friendliness that the other characters can easily bounce off of. When you first see her, she seems like this compulsive politician, but as the show goes on, you learn she's actually pretty chill and likes to crack jokes. This is apparent with her relationship with Josh. Joey and Josh's relationship is pretty hilarious to see, and as a viewer, having someone like Joey to bounce off of for Josh is good because of how it handles Josh. Josh is pretty serious, and he's a paranoid politician, to be honest, who focuses a lot on doing what needs to be done for the president. Joey is someone who is also determined, but knows when to relax and when to take a break. This is evident when the president just made the State of the Union speech, and Josh is stressed out about the polling information that he desperately wants to see. Joey, who is all relaxed and calm during the situation, constantly tells Josh to chill while being funny at the same time. But through all of this, we see a degree of trust that Josh has for Joey. And this trust is something that we have never seen in another character up to this point. Not even Donna. When Josh tells Joey about the president's MS, this is the first person outside the main gang who really knows. Yeah, Oliver Babish knows about it, but this is the first person that isn't like a lawyer or something like that knows about this. This is a big deal. And of all the people Josh turns to, it's Joey. It's for the polling information, but he trusts Joey enough to make this decision, and that is what is important about it. Joey is a person we turn to when we need relief, but she's also a person we turn to when we need to trust someone. The last thing to talk about with Joey is her relationship with Josh, and by this I mean them getting together. This is something, looking back, I'm glad didn't happen, but I wish it had when I was watching it. I say no now because, looking back on it, she's too good for him. Josh at this point is very compulsive and unrelenting, and this relationship wouldn't have worked out solely because Joey is much more mature than he is. This is evident for when Josh gets with Amy. They both act like immature, crazy people, and we see Josh learn from this and grow from it. Enough to where he feels comfortable to be with Donna, someone who is more mature than Amy, but is less mature than Joey. My point is that Joey and Josh never had the right timing to be together, and that's why I'm glad they never got together. The important part about Joey is that she offers a great way for the show to introduce new information and to have a reliable character it can pull out of its pocket. I'm a big fan of Joey. I really liked her. I thought she did a great job in the show. The actress is great, and I love Kenny. He's pretty hilarious. Him and Joey make a great duo, and I just really like the show. So, yeah, I really like Joey. She does a great job. Moving on.
I'm an admiral in the U.S. Navy and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Beat that with a stick.
While I do not have a whole lot to say about Fitz Wallace, I definitely thought he warranted his own part. Fitz is probably the best side character in this show. He never outstays his welcome, and is always an interesting person to see in the show. I do not think there is a single episode I do not like that has Fitz Wallace in it. He's a character that I feel like had the perfect amount of screen time, if that makes sense. I never felt like he was overstaying his welcome, and I never felt like he was, not in it enough. I felt like he was just perfect the way he was, and I really liked that. I think the reason why people love Fitz Wallace is that he never does anything wrong. I mean it. Fitz Wallace is perfect and does not make a single mistake in the show. You could argue some of the choices he makes politically or militarily, I guess. But what I'm talking about is just Fitz as a person. He's someone whose sole intentions are to do good. He never really does anything out of greed. He is always doing something for the greater good of the country. Not the president, the country. He is respectful and rarely gets mad. And I do not think there's a single time where it just looked like Fitz blew up at someone for no reason. We see him get mad. In fact, my favorite scene with him is where he yells at Leo. But Fitz, when he's talking to Josh about the pilot who is getting court-martialed, Josh tells him he's going to go to Leo. And this is how he reacts.
Admiral, you know I have all the respect in the world for you, right?
Yes.
And if I didn't, I'd respect the uniform, the rank, and the position anyway.
What is it, son?
I feel like I have to go to Leo.
Good. That's the way it's supposed to work.
He acts perfectly calm and actually says this. This character is great, and this is the exact character you need in a show where morals and beliefs are constantly being questioned. And before I leave, I want to talk about my favorite scene with Fitz.
I'm gonna get back to the office.
We measure the success of a mission by two things. Was it successful, and how few civilians did we hurt? They measure success by how many. Pregnant women are delivering bombs. You're talking to me about international laws? The laws of nature don't even apply here. I've been a soldier for 38 years, and I've found an enemy I can kill. He can't cancel Sharif's trip, Leo. You've got to tell him he can't cancel it.
The reason why I love this scene is that we have never seen before this moment Fitz angry about something. This scene is great because Fitz lays out so beautifully. It is hard to tell sometimes who the good guys and who the bad guys are. But here, it is very clear. And Fitz does not want to take any chances, and I love it. You can see the weight of this when the camera turns on Leo, and he realizes that they're going to have to do this. In the end, Fitz is a great and awesome part of this show, and I will forever love him.
So, Charlie, do you ever get a night off?
No, actually.
It's too bad.
No, it's all right.
No, I meant because it'd be cool to go out or something.
Zoe Bartlett sucks. I only put her in her own segment because she is a pretty big part of season 1 and 4. But let's be honest, guys, she's just one of those characters who's just meant there to be a drama fest. It was kind of cool to see one of the president's kids and how he reacted with her. I also liked her interactions with Charlie and how they built their relationship. It was well done, and I liked a couple of episodes where they showed Charlie and her building a relationship. But I think I liked it mainly because it builds Charlie's character growth, and I'm more of a fan of Charlie than I am Zoe. But then the show decided to write her off the show. Alright, that's fine. It was a little weird, but nothing I couldn't handle until season 4. Here we are introduced to Zoe and her French boyfriend, who I do not remember his name and I do not choose to look up. So we would just call him Pompous Asshole. Oh, and by the way, I couldn't find a lot of footage of the Pompous Asshole guy, so whenever I need to mention him, I'm just going to throw this picture up or this picture. That way you guys know. So when we first see Zoe and Pompous Asshole, your immediately thought is, hey, Zoe is back. But then you begin to realize something. This is not the same character. I mean it. Zoe in this season is completely different than she was in season 1. In season 1, she's very sweet, innocent, spoiled, and kind of naive, but she's still a nice person. Here she is manipulative, mean, and kind of just batshit crazy. So we learned that Zoe and Charlie broke up, and she eventually met this rich French guy. Sorry, not French guy, I mean Pompous Asshole. This person is someone I knew wasn't going to be that important, so I never really bothered to care about him. But the problem is, Zoe acts like such a creep, and she brings him back over and over again. He's all over season 4, and it is so distracting and annoying. In this season, we have Zoe dating this Pompous Asshole, and then we learn that Charlie still likes Zoe. Then we learn that she's only dating the Pompous Asshole to make Charlie jealous, which somehow works. Then Charlie keeps going after her until she gets kidnapped, and at the end, it's kind of sweet with her, and Charlie and her are kind of staying together, and he's really trying to care for her. And at the end, you kind of see that he's going to propose to her. But the problem is that that entire arc was so creepy, and it made Charlie seem like an idiot for chasing her. She was crazy. Anyway, when she got kidnapped, it was probably the best thing that happened to her in the show. Jesus. No, her getting kidnapped was probably after she got kidnapped, she acts more like a normal human being, and I really like her. She kind of just acts like an adult, and I appreciate that. So at least I got that part right. But yeah, guys, Zoe Bartlett sucks in the beginning. I'm done talking about her. Yeah, let's go to Congresswoman Wyatt.
Did you just see that?
Oh my God. Have you been on the plane the whole time?
No, I hopped on board when you guys were over the Great Lakes.
Congresswoman Wyatt is very, very annoying. Just so you guys know, I do like characters in this show, and I'm just getting rid of the ones I don't like as much first, so let's just get this person over with. Toby Zacks is a pretty weird character. At first, I actually really liked her because she showed a lot of personality, and I was excited to see a character like this bounce off of Toby. It is also interesting because you can also see why Toby liked her, but also why they got divorced. They have things that they like about each other, but overall, it's pretty easy to see why they aren't together. My only issue with her is when she gets pregnant. After she gets pregnant, Toby tries to marry her and she says no. Now here's the thing, Toby has shown no interest in remarrying his wife before. and it just appears that she's pregnant and this has no build up at all. But hey, even if that's where the show wants to take us, I'm fine with that. But when Toby is all of a sudden trying to marry her, they make it seem like it's because he loves her and wants the best for his children. But they never tell you. Is it both of those reasons? Just one? Or neither? And some secret other reason that he's keeping to himself? I don't know. And the show never explains it. Then she says no to marrying him and he keeps trying. And she says no. And after a while, you were kind of just like, okay, so she doesn't want to marry him, that's fine. But then there's a scene with Congresswoman Wyatt and Toby. It's right after the election. He wins the second term. And right after that, Toby goes to a party because his wife just won election too. And there she yells to the crowd, "Hey guys, my man got the president elected." And then kisses him in front of everyone and everyone cheers. And I'm just like, what? This is so stupid. So the father of your children is trying to remarry you, but you say no. But then you just act like he's your true love and you kiss him when it's convenient to you. Truly, this character is so hypocritical in the entire show. And that is why I hate her. I don't mind her as much in the later season when Toby's being threatened to go to prison, because I feel like she would push Toby to lie and stuff like that. But it was too late at that point, and that's why I did not like her. Okay. I think that's the last person I actually don't like in this show. I think every other character I like and respect up to this point. So, yeah. Look at me go. 2 out of 21 characters. Let's just go to the next one.
It's in your office?
It is.
You keep it.
Permanently?
Mail it to me. Your home address to my home address.
Yeah, I think that's a little complicated.
It is, isn't it?
I'll hang on to it until
Okay.
we'll get better at this.
One can only hope.
So Kate was never really someone I truly cared about in the beginning, but I really grew to like her. She has a fun personality that I really enjoyed, and when Josh leaves the White House, she really begins to shine as her own character, because that leaves fewer people to bounce off of CJ. I do wish she and Toby had worked a little better, but they never talked a lot, so it never really affected me as much. I also like Kate's relationship with Will and how it evolved, and especially how it ended. I liked how she didn't give up everything to go be with him when he ran, or vice versa, but how she was just like, yeah, it's best for you, this is what's best for me. At first, I wish she had gotten the job in Santos' administration, but after a while, I came to think it was for the best. In the end, I don't have a lot to say about Kate. She was good. I just enjoyed her, but I think she could have been held a little better in some circumstances, but in the end, I mean, she was just a good add-on to the cast, and she made it very enjoyable, and especially when, Josh leaves, she really shines after that, especially with the war in Kazakhstan and all that. So yeah, she's pretty fun, and it's fun to see someone inside the, the more military side of the West Wing towards the end.
I have an agenda. I pursue it relentlessly. I've been known to...
Here's what I think. I think it's easier to throw rocks at a house than to build one. And I think you're ready for more.
You called me a coward, sir?
Amy Gardner. A character I didn't like in the beginning, but became one of my favorite side characters. At first, Amy kind of annoyed me with her constant flirty jokes, but on rewatches, I have learned to actually love her personality. She is also a good love interest for Josh, to be honest. Someone like this makes a lot more sense for Josh than Joey or even Donna did to an extent, you could argue. Amy is a brilliant political mind, and although Joey and Josh would have made a kind of cute couple, Amy and Josh make more of a realistic and honestly scary couple. These two have a lot of political power, and it was really cool to see them even bounce off each other and use their stuff together, especially after they broke up. Amy also has some interesting character growth that is pretty subtle. When you first see Amy, she's a compulsive, vicious fighter who doesn't really follow the rules. She does what she can to get her agenda done. She's quick-tempered, impatient, and reckless. Sounds like someone else you know? But by the end of the series, you see her learn to be more self-controlled. One of my favorite scenes with her is when she and Santos are talking in the White House and he tells her to help fix the place on the inside. It was a good way of showing that Amy had been criticizing the White House but never made a huge effort to really get her hands dirty and to get it done. It's easier to shout than to act. And when Santos calls her out on it, she takes this leap to action and gets it done. I really feel like the major difference between Amy and Josh is that Josh was already in a place where he was like feeling the need to act, while Amy didn't. She was more of the critical side of it all. But we learned that both grow out of those roles by the end of the show. Josh learns to be more responsible and to be more, intuitive and all that. And Amy learns to be actually more like Josh and to go get your hands dirty and get the job done. And I really enjoyed that. In the end, she was a really good add-on to the show that I just enjoyed.
Now I gotta go fishing.
Give it to me.
No.
No, you'll kill it.
You think I can't take care of a goldfish?
I absolutely do not.
Danny Kincannon. I like Danny. Who doesn't? He's one of the most likable characters in the show, arguably. I never feel like he is acting too stupid, and every scene with him I pretty much enjoy. Oh, except for this one scene where he's flirting with Mandy, or Mandy's flirting with him. I only hate that scene because I don't like Mandy. So, yeah, that's not a big deal. His quippy attitude makes a great contrast with CJ's more serious persona, and it is really fun to see her act the way she does with him. Danny has some really good highs, and that make me enjoy him. Seeing him figure out the murder of Sharif and his process of it all was probably the point where I was most intrigued with him. If I could, I would probably have it where maybe there was one episode that was just focused on maybe him trying to figure out or find the pilot or something like that. I think a little side quest with him would have been really fun and entertaining. It's a shame that he disappears until the last season, but I really like his role there as well. Danny helping CJ, someone we have focused a lot of time on, and how to just be a normal person again was really sweet. I'll talk more about this when I get to CJ, but when I first saw this arc, I thought it was a little unrealistic, but I've learned to appreciate it. CJ goes through a lot of crap in the last season, and when you see her from season 1 to 7, you realize how much more paranoid she has become through this job, and Danny is a person to help bring her back to the more normalcy of life. And I really like how he says that he knows he's gonna be, Mr. Danny CJ Craig or whatever he says there, because it really shows that Danny's just a selfless guy. He's a good guy in the heart, and I really like just his overall persona in the show. He brings a lot of levity, and he is a great contrast to CJ, which I love.
Chuck Webb is a 7-term congressman who, as chairman of not one but 2 commerce subcommittees, has taken money from companies he regulates. He's joined protests designed to frighten pregnant women.
What's your point?
There are worse things in the world than no longer being alive.
Alright, Will Bailey is a character that was wasted. Will Bailey is what I call a sandwich character. I really liked him, and then I hated him, and then I kind of liked him again. When you first meet him, Will is a person of ideals. He is a man of principle, and that is apparent when Sam finds him. We see it in the fact that he is running a campaign for a dead guy. We see it when he is telling those kids it doesn't matter who you vote for, and it's confirmed when he convinces the president to change fucking foreign policy. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. He's also a character that bounces off pretty well with Tokyo. We quickly learned that Will is kind of like Sam in the beginning of the show. In the beginning of the show, Sam kind of rolled over to his friends whenever they fought against him, but he was really tough and confident when he was fighting people against the White House. Will is pretty simple. The difference is that Sam learns not to do this by the end, and Will never fixes this problem. Instead of growing, he diverges and goes to work for the vice president. Now, I want to be clear that I think this is a good idea, having someone we like go to work for the VP, someone we don't know anything about, is a really good idea. It can help villainize or humanize him and give us a perspective that we've never seen before in the vice president's office. We've never had someone work for the vice president, Horns or Wilson. And to be fair, the show does use this. It uses Will's position to make it seem that the VP is just another sleazy politician. But the problem is you can't do that without ruining Will, or at least having him quit the job. Instead, Will knows that Bingo Bob is a bad guy. He knows that this guy wouldn't make a great president, but he chooses him over someone else because it's easy and convenient. Will chooses the easy way out. He believes that he can change Bob Russell to be a mediocre president, and that it's better to have a mediocre Democrat than a Republican president. So Will is choosing the easy way out. Will, the guy who ran a campaign for a dead guy, decides to just choose the nearest body near him because it was convenient. I feel like this really goes against Will's character and devalues him overall. There is a scene with Toby and Will that I feel like really it basically explains everything for me. In this scene, the White House has been on a shutdown, and Will and Toby are locked in a room together. And they're arguing because Toby is upset that Will is propping up the vice president. He feels like the vice president is a clown, and Will is actually making him someone who can actually win the presidency. And he doesn't think that's a good idea because the vice president isn't a good guy. He's just a politician. And Will is choosing the easy way out by grabbing the nearest body. And Will says, "What am I supposed to do? Scour the countryside looking for someone?" Yes, he should go find someone because that is what you need to do. And Toby's trying to get this message across to Will, and Will never learns it. But to be honest, I can kind of see why they chose this, because they wanted to do this to have the VP run for president and to have whoever Josh picked, aka Santos, be against them. They wanted a villain in the primary, which makes sense. I think this is actually really good to plan this far ahead. Building a scummy villain before we meet our protagonist means we can focus on the protagonist instead of the villain. If we get to know Bob Russell in season 5 and a little bit of 6, then we can spend the rest of that time focusing on Santos and his relationship with Josh, so we don't have to worry too much about that. We already know Hoynes, and now we already know Russell, so let's focus on Santos, the guy we want to root for. We have 2 antagonists, let's focus on the protagonist. And I think the show actually does this really good. There's no need to show us, Bob Russell's character growth because we've already seen it. This is a good way to plan ahead in the show, but in doing so, it made us hate Will. At least it made me hate him. And I guess that would be fine, but then they use Will to devalue Donna later in the show by trying to turn Donna against Josh and all that. And I don't really like that. I do like how he teaches Donna to be more of a political mind and all that. But in the end, it's still kind of annoys me. But then I do like him by the end, because when he gets Toby's job, he stops being evil vice president guy and he becomes good president. He goes back to being Will. He pretty much goes back to the way we first met him, and that's when I liked him. So I was kind of okay with it. In the end, I feel like Will was a character destined to be ruined by the future of the show, which makes sense, but it's still just unfortunate.
12 seconds.
Sometimes when you keep pressing the button, it won't load.
She's right. We have to go to another page and then connect to this one.
How's it coming?
I've got 3 women trying to tell me how to use the New York Times website.
Hey, it's pretty straightforward. Do you need some help?
The Santos administration, or the Santos gang as I call them, are basically the staff you go through with season 7. They're supposed to enlist similar emotions to the original gang. This group consists of Otto, Bram, Rana, Annabeth, Donna, and Luis. And while, of course, I don't like them as much as the originals, I think this was handled pretty well. I thought I would review these guys as a whole because while they don't have enough individually to stand on their own, they do have a lot as a group, exception being Donna. She'll get her own segment coming up later. But the Santos gang are fun. They're energetic characters, and I like how they're all younger than the original group. This is good because it shows that the younger generation is kind of like taking the torch to an extent, but it also shows why these guys may be a little more reckless or inexperienced to, the Bartlett campaign in certain issues. This is great because this makes Josh way more experienced than these guys and allows him to teach them and through them us, and to have them learn throughout the show how to be better politicians. This is especially apparent in Rana. She is the only person in the Santos gang who was there from the beginning, and you can really see how she has grown as a politician from when you first meet her to the end. She's more confident and actually is able to stand up and give her own opinions every now and then, which is pretty good. Another good member of the group is Otto. While not as important to the overall group, Otto is a cool little character who actually doesn't get that high up in the administration, which I like. I like how not every single one of these guys is going to be senior staff to the president. Rana gets to be executive secretary to the president. Otto gets as a speechwriter. and Bram is the director of scheduling advances. These are 3 positions we haven't seen besides executive secretary, which is Mrs. Lanningham's job. They all got their unique roles in the White House, which leads me to my next point. These guys are not complete ripoffs of the original gang. Each one of these guys has a completely different personality than the original. The only person you could say is close to someone is Lou is pretty similar to Toby, but we'll talk about her in a second. I've heard some people compare Otto to Sam, and I don't really see it because just because they're speechwriters doesn't make them similar. Otto is much more timid than Sam, he's not as smart as Sam, and he's just not as experienced. Sam is much more upfront, he was making suggestions, he was putting out points, he was doing a lot more things, and just the flashbacks that we saw of Sam in the Bartlett campaign than Otto is throughout the entire season, which isn't a bad thing. This just shows that Sam and Otto are different people. These guys are their own individual characters, and it's really good to see that. If they were the original gang, no one would like them, if at all. And you can see that in a lot of shows, like The Force Awakens has a similar gang to A New Hope, and most people, if not everyone, likes A New Hope more than The Force Awakens. It's a similar thing. Trying to just replicate what came before isn't always going to help you. But then we get to Louise, or also known as Lou. And she is by far the best person in this group. In fact, I wouldn't even really include her in this group because she is more on the level of Josh. Lou is basically Toby, and while that would annoy me that she's similar, she reminds me of him, but more like when we first ever saw Toby. Toby from season 1 is much different than he is by season 7. Season 7, he's much more calm. He's still kind of a jackass, but he's still pretty calm and, much more embracive of everything. Season 1, Toby is much more reckless, much more outgoing, much more. While they do share similarities, Lou is much more attack-oriented than Toby. She's much more like Josh in the sense that she wants to always beat the opponent. Toby was always very centralized on his, why they were there. They were there to do a job. She's more here of beating the next guy and getting Santos to be president kind of a thing. She's not much as looking to the future as much as looking in the present, which makes her a lot different. She's much more cutthroat, and I really like it. She's hilarious, and I love how she's able not only give Josh a break at certain moments in the show, but also teaches him a lot of things as well. She's one who kind of just slaps Josh around and tells him, to do different things. She's the one who tells Josh to hire Donna. She's also the one who beats Bruno in their arguments for the debate rules. Lou has strengths that Josh doesn't, and this makes her very valuable. I also like how she doesn't even really want to join the Santos campaign, and it takes some convincing to get her on, and then even after that, it takes more convincing to make her part of the administration, which I like, because this shows from the beginning, she was like, nah, I'm just in this for the beginning, the little short term, beating the other guy, and she learns, hey, maybe I can do some good. It was a good way of teaching her something in the show. The Santos gang are characters that I really liked by the end of the show. They each have their moments, and I like how they all press forward and get the job done. They're a great group of characters. Now, moving on.
No more. I really don't care who's right, who's wrong. We're both right. We're both wrong.
So, I may have forgotten to write Bruno's part in this video, so I just now wrote it. And since this video is already really long, we're going to do a lightning round with Bruno. So here we go. Bruno is a really interesting character. I didn't like him too much in season 3, but I really liked him by the end of season 7. I liked how he was helping Vinnick not because he wants to win or beat someone, but because he believes it is A, the best thing to do for the Democrats, oddly enough, and B, because he believes that Vinnick is better than Santos. I like how he's able to protect Josh in the beginning of the show. It shows that he's more experienced than him, but then by the time you get to the nuclear plant going off, it surprises him when Josh doesn't do what he expects. This was a really good way of showing that Josh was growing and learning from this campaign. In the end, Bruno was a smart addition to the show, one that I didn't expect, but I'm glad I got. Alright, see? I told you we'd get it done under a minute. Next, moving on to Abby Bartlett.
Electrolytes and metabolic panels are within normal limits. Chest x-ray is clear and prostate screens are fine.
Okay.
So we can have sex now.
Okay, that's not me and you, right?
Go.
Yeah.
Abby Bartlett is just one of those characters in the show who probably never changes. She goes through emotional beats of Zoe's kidnapping, and it was really sweet to see her, but she never gives up on her goal to make Jeff as good of a president as he is a man, which is my favorite quote from her. I really like Abby, and I don't have much more to say. Plus, this video is really long already, and someone's gonna have to be cut a little bit, so yeah, that's pretty much it. I really liked her.
Yes, the woman who works out there, who I imagine is your secretary, offered me coffee or a soft drink.
Okay, so...
She was also kind enough to ask for my coat.
Excellent.
She seems to be a very good secretary.
Well, she'll be happy to hear that. She's standing right outside the door.
Ow.
Ainsley Hayes is a character I love so much. Whoever thought of a blonde Republican lawyer to bounce off of Sam was a genius. Ainsley is a character who works really well with Sam, and I honestly thought they would end up together eventually. Ainsley's quirky personality makes a great duo with Sam, and her being a Republican offers a unique perspective that the show needs every now and then. Also, her sense of duty in the show really is what makes me love her. If there's one thing you probably should know about me, it's that I love every character in the show who has a sense of duty to their country. Because I really, really, really wish that politicians in real life would do that, but I live in the real world. In any case, she's a great character who I thoroughly enjoyed and wish there was more of in the show. I saw an article that Sorskins actually had the chance to lock her up in the show permanently, but he didn't take it, and eventually the actress Emily Proctor got a job on CSI Miami and just didn't return except for a cameo in the final season, which is a damn shame because I really thought she did a great job in the show. She just offers a great personality that the show really needs every now and then, and they kind of replaced her a little bit with Matthew Perry's character. He is really good as well, and I really enjoy him, but he doesn't stay around long enough for me to enjoy him. Ainsley Hayes and Matthew Perry's characters were both great characters who I wish stayed in the show longer.
Good night, Leo.
Don't do what you're doing, John.
You're a world-class political operative, Leo. Why the hell shouldn't I keep on doing what I've been doing?
'Cause I'll win, and you'll end up playing celebrity golf the rest of your life.
John Stupid Hoynes is probably the closest thing to a twist villain this show has had. While we have had things like the Speaker of the House become straight on villains and things like that in the show, I think the show really focused on Hoynes being like a villain towards the end of season 6. Hoynes to me, though, he always felt like a little mishandled. I say this because at first we see the VP and we don't like him. He's rude to CJ and Leo has to put him in his place. Then they humanize him through Leo, and it isn't until we see him with his book deal do we see that he's been lying to the public with his conversations to the White House and his staff, and we learned that he actually had like sex with CJ and other women as well. Now I don't think like the show is like saying that he raped her or anything like that, but he simply charmed her and all of that, and it is a mistake that she made. But this still kind of feels like out of nowhere. Sure, the seeds are there, but I never felt like they fully sprouted. It felt like something like, you know, from Big Hero 6 or something like that, you know? Just a weird twist villain that wasn't really needed. After this point, though, you know, they pushed Hoynes to be a villain, and now he is another contestant for Russell to fight in Santos. And I always felt like it was too much, you know? Just use Russell to be the villain for Santos. Until I figured out, I think, what the show's plan was. The plan was never to use Hoynes to push Josh or Santos forward. That is what Will and Russell are for. No, Hoynes is used to make Donna a better character. Donna learns a lot about being a proper political advisor during the campaign, and Will and Russell, they don't think that Santos has a shot to winning, so they're focused on the Hoynes campaign. I think this is some brilliant writing that I never really thought of, but I'm really glad it's here. Because I like Donna. So I think Hoynes has a lot of great things about him, but I'm really happy that we get to see You know, the Hoynes campaign gets used so Donna, Will, and Russell have an enemy, and then Donna, Russell, and Will are an enemy from Josh and Santos. In the end, I thought he was actually pretty well done towards the end of the show, and he was really well done in the beginning of the show. It's just in the middle, he kind of fell apart for me. I like his relationship with Leo, but it kind of gets ruined now because you realize he never really cared because he's just another political mind. I like his ability to be a scary villain, but that eventually falters when he talks to CJ and becomes a twisted villain comic book person. I do actually like how he tries to manipulate Josh throughout the show, especially this line.
There are going to be lots of ways.
No zealot, like a convert, Josh.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means you'd have been great at Leo's job.
It just shows him playing into Josh's ego nature. But don't worry, we'll get to Josh. In the end, weird character, but ended up enjoying his payoff with Donna.
Thank you. We're going to run out of prime time. It is with great humility that I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Good old Arnie is probably my favorite character introduced after season 6. He's hilarious, cool, but most importantly, he's sincere. Arnie honestly just wants to make America better. He believes he deserves it and can help the American people. Hell, even Toby sees it in Arnie, and that's something. Arnie is a character that lets himself be himself over politics. Sound like someone else you know? To be honest, Arnie probably should have won the election. Not just because of the reality of it all, but because he is more of a successor to Jed Bartlett than Santos is. I actually like that. When I was watching the show, I was actually wondering who would win because they had spent a lot of time to making us like Arnold, especially in season 7. But they also show us his character in season 6. I really love how when we first see Vinnick, we think he's just another senator Josh has to help whip into shape. And when I heard him say he was running, I actually didn't pay much attention to it for 2 reasons. One, I didn't know who Alan Alda was, so yeah, that was just me not knowing people before. When I saw Vinnick stick to his gut and say he was against the ethanol tax, I knew this guy was going to be a major player. Vinnick was a character who I felt like deserved the presidency by the end, and even though I'm happy that Josh and Santos won, I felt kind of bad for Vinnick because I felt like he was cheated out of something that should have been his. But this show threw me a curveball after the election. Instead of just ignoring him, we get a whole episode devoted to Vinnick and how he is handling the aftermath of the election. And boy, is that a good episode. It is by far my favorite episode with Vinnick in it. And because we see him deal with his pride, his anger, and his frustration, and then his ability to learn and move on when he accepts the role as Secretary of State, which after that made me happy that Santos had won. I love Vinnick. I love Alan Alda and thought he did a great job as Vinnick. He brought a lot of life to the character and treated it with respect. I'm glad he didn't take it like a joke. He treated this like any other role, and I'm very glad he did. I really enjoyed Vinnick, and I'm glad he's a central focus on the later seasons. Now, on to the big one, his counterpart, Matthew Santos.
I left something for you on the desk. Just some random thoughts.
I look forward to them, too.
Make me proud, Mr. President.
I'll do my best, Mr. President.
Matthew Santos is really good. Shocker. But he is a character who I thoroughly just enjoy. Matt Santos has probably the best arc of Season 7. You really get to see him go from nice hometown congressman to full-on candidate for the United States of America. His transformation feels earned by the end, and while I do have problems with his character, I do like him overall. Matt Santos, I only really have 2 problems with him, and we're going to talk about that. But first, let's go into the things I like about him. First of all, Santos is a great counterpart to Josh. He's quippy and smart, yet he is undeniably a good guy. Here's the thing, Santos' character has to be a great guy. If Santos was a scum in any way, seasons 6 and 7 would be trash. Because why do I want a guy who sucks to win the presidency? And why is Josh supporting this guy who sucks? I think there is a very important part of Santos' character that needs to be right. Santos needs to be the good man, and Josh needs to be the good politician. These two need to balance each other out because they're both on opposite sides of the spectrum. The good man keeps the ethical and good side of the campaign, while the politician keeps the reality and strategizing together. These two are very important to get right, and we had 6 seasons to get to know Josh, so let's focus on this guy, Matt Santos. They did this so well, and I really appreciate it. These two have great chemistry. And, you know, I like Santos because he's from Texas. Because, well, I'm from Texas. So that's cool. So now we're going to get into the 2 things I am not a big fan of with Santos. I don't like the whole subplot with the unborn child kind of a thing. Or the, you know, his brother having a child and leaving the girl and he pays for her. Whatever. If you don't remember, that's basically the whole story. And it's kind of a weird subplot in the show that, like, I like the idea. I like what they were going for. They wanted to give a scare because at this point it had looked like Santos was gaining track. Having something like this is actually a great idea, and I'm happy with that. Also, it does a great job of humanizing Vinnick when he says he's not going to release it to the public. And I actually really like that. But the problem with this is right here when Santos said it was his brother kids, and this is the line we get from Santos.
You don't believe me. Doesn't matter what I believe. You know the truth.
I don't like this because it just makes us doubt Santos, and I'm not sure that Santos is telling the truth. But why spread doubt and then never bring the subplot back again? It just feels a little weird and a little forced to me. Like, if they had brought this back maybe in the campaign, he still works through it and he proves that he's okay, maybe that would have been okay. It's just kind of weird to bring this and then to throw it out the garbage. It was kind of like, ooh, scare. Oh, just kidding. We're all good now. It's just a little weird. The second thing is, I wish that he and Josh had a more clear relationship. Now, let me be clear. I think that Josh and Santos' relationship is really good by the end. When you first see Josh and Santos, they're fighting, and you can tell there's a lack of trust between the two. They both know they're good guys, but they can't really trust each other because they're completely different people. But by the end, they have become not only able to respect each other, but friends. This is great character work, and I really love seeing them argue and come to resolutions. But my problem stems from this one scene in West Wing. In this scene, President Bartlett is talking to some secretary who stays behind from the State of the Union in case it gets blown up. And before the president leaves, he says this.
You got a best friend?
Yes, sir.
Is he smarter than you?
Yes, sir.
Would you trust him with your life?
Yes, sir.
That's your chief of staff.
This scene forever immortalizes Jed and Leo's friendship and care for each other. I knew that these two were best friends trying to help the world and the best they could. There are other scenes that reinforce this as well, but this is the first one that really sold me on it. Jed and Leo are best friends, able to call each other out when they need to. With Santos and Josh, I was never completely sold on this, at least until the very end. I don't think that the show was either, to be honest. We know that Josh sees Santos as this good man, and when he campaigns with him in the beginning, this is confirmed with how Santos is actually a bad politician, but a good man. And as the show progresses, you see these two gain a bond. By the end, when Santos has an outburst and yells at Josh and his wife, I was so happy to see this response from Josh.
You want me to?
No.
Damn it, Josh, we need to focus.
We are. You like Goodwin and McNally?
Oh, well, it's not like I had a whole hell of a lot of time with McNally.
Berryhill had 5 minutes 8 years ago. You like her?
Yeah.
And Goodwin? Great, we got an attorney general and a secretary of state. That's not bad for a 3-state, 6-market day. Now we're gonna have this conversation about Leno. Then you're gonna talk to Nancy. Then you're gonna make up with your wife, so we have a relatively happy couple for the rally in Houston. Congressman?
Yeah.
This scene is so good because Josh didn't freak out. He wasn't stressed about the politics in that moment. He saw his friend stressed out and decided to calm him down. This was such a good moment that I loved it. But I feel like that bonds were never there all the way. While the seeds are there, I don't think they fully sprouted. Even with a great scene like that, I'm still 100% sure that Jed and Leo are best friends. But are Josh and Santos best friends? If there was one scene missing from this entire show, I would be sold on it. But there's one scene that makes me question it. And this is it. There's a scene where in the campaign where Josh kind of screws up. And the DNC tells Santos to let Leo take over the campaign. They want to replace Josh as the leader of the campaign. And we see that even Josh gets ready to give up because he's discouraging himself. And we see Santos hesitates too. He looks at Leo and basically asks Leo if they should do this. And Leo is the one that says no, let Josh run the campaign. With one simple change, I would have not had any problems with this. What is the change? If Santos had said, Josh got me into the race and I'm not going to give him up. That's all they would have taken. If, without a shred of doubt, he had said that line, I would have been sold. But instead, he hesitated. And that personally made me question their friendship a little bit. Josh got Santos into this. Josh got Santos through the primary. Josh got him where he is now. And to have Santos question him a little bit after that, it felt a little betrayal. Because I felt like they were gaining a spawn, but Santos wasn't there all the way. There are a few other scenes, but that's probably the most obvious one for me. And I just feel like if you change that one thing, it would have fixed all the problems I had with this. And so that is like my one thing with Santos is I'm just like, I wish Santos had this grip, but he didn't. And that was a little frustrating for the show. But Santos and Josh are what make the show like all the way. And I'll finish this off with Josh. But Santos is a great way to get a character or a viewer engaged in the show. Santos' job is to be the next heir. He's the next guy. But we don't fully care about him as much as we care about Josh because we've had so much more time as a viewer. But we care about Santos because Josh cares about Santos. And through that, when we see him go through the struggle of not speaking out against the driver license bill in California, and we just see Santos becomes his own man, or when we see Santos make his own ad, when we see scenes like this, it shows us that Santos is a good man, and it makes us relate to him, and that's why Santos is a great character in this show. Overall, he's awesome. His wife is hilarious and has a great moral compass for Santos and for Josh. Santos' personality I really enjoy, and I love seeing someone a little younger go for the office of the president. Santos is much younger than Jed, Bartlett, and Vinnick, and it was really cool to see him go all the way out for that. I just really enjoyed him. He was a great character in the show.
Go. You're a cheap hack. And if you come after Leo, I'm gonna bust you like a piñata.
Sam Seaborn. He was my favorite character in this show. He was funny, he's passionate, smart, and best of all, a good man. Sam is someone who always does what he thinks is best, not just for himself, not even for the party, or even the White House, but he does what he thinks is best for America. He's a true patriot that actually cares for people in a way that not even Josh and Toby do. I do not think there is one time where Sam compromises his beliefs for a political purpose. And I love that shit. I love having a guy who would do just what he can to help others and to stand by his moral compass. But, of course, Sam has flaws. But my favorite part about Sam is that even compared to Toby and Josh, Sam had the bigger character arc planned out. Sam is in the show for the first 4 seasons, and in that, he grows so much as a character. And in those 4 seasons, I think he grows more than Toby, Josh, and CJ do in those 4 seasons. And you could argue that he grows more in those 4 seasons than, like, Toby or CJ do throughout the show, which is really crazy. The fact you can even make that argument is impressive. But Here's my point. Sam had a lot going for him. You could see in the beginning how he would cave whenever Josh or Toby told him to do something, and he wouldn't fight that hard against it, unless he truly believed in it. By the 4th season, Sam is much more confident, and is almost hardened by what he has learned, but he's still true to himself. In the beginning, Sam and CJ felt like rookies, but by season 4, Sam feels just as experienced as Josh and Toby, and he's confident, and it's a crying shame Rob Lowe left the show. If you don't know, Rob Lowe started off as the most paid actor in the show, and the show was going to be essentially about him pretty much. It's going to be about how he became the president after Jed Bartlett. But by season 3, he wasn't making as much money. He was like everyone else had gotten paid more, and he wanted more money, and the show wouldn't give it to him, so he left. Yeah, that's why Sam was my favorite character in the show, because he leaves in the middle, and unfortunately they did it in a way that nearly ruins his character arc. When Sam runs for Congress, I first expected him to lose and to come back, but I could tell something was off of how they used him to introduce Will. So I was like, oh no, I don't think Sam is coming back. But rather than having him lose, they have him lose and give up. Sam, the never stop being titan of a man, gives up because he lost a district that everyone told him he would lose, and that he knew he would lose, and he ran anyway. And by the way, I know that it's in Sam's character arc to feel like he can win that. I knew that was coming. But it's the fact he gives up. It's the fact he quits. And it really sucks for me. I really like his cameo at the end, but then that started to make me question it too, because I realized something. When Sam is talking to Josh, he's hesitating to come back. Not because he was embarrassed he lost the race. Not because he didn't feel worthy to come back, but because of this.
Amazing thing what you did. Well, that's the easy part. It's what you do with it that counts. You know how much I'm making now? It's gonna make me want to puke. Not make you want to. You'll actually puke.
This to me is the worst thing they could have done to Sam's character. I would have rather Sam give up than to have Sam give up and to sell out for money. Sam is hesitating to go back because he is making a lot of money at this law firm, and I feel like this goes against everything we learned about Sam. We learned in the beginning of season 2 that Sam worked at a law firm, and we can clearly see that he isn't enjoying it. You can see that he is frustrated, and that it's confirmed when he tries to have the clients buy nicer boats. But when Josh comes back and he does this, Sam responds like this.
That.
Sam, please keep your seat. Sam, where are you going? New Hampshire.
That shows that it wasn't about the money for Sam, but it was about doing something he loved for a cause he loved. He left the firm for public service. So to have him backtrack on all that character growth made me really frustrated. So yeah, that's why he was my favorite character. But guess what? This could have all been avoided. Yes, all this could have been avoided even if Rob Lowe wanted to leave. You want to know how? Have him win. If Sam had won the race for Congress, and that's why he left the show, it would have been great. I would have felt happy that a character, despite all odds, won a public office race. And before any of you guys tell me that it would be unrealistic, let me tell you that Jed and Santos won the presidency despite all odds and everyone telling them they won it. No one would have been mad if it had ended like that with Sam. But then here's the real cup of tea, guys. Sam winning would have been great because not only would it have kept his character arc in present, and that's why he did it, but it would have set up something even greater if Rob Lowe ever did want to come back and they would pay him the money. Sam could run for president. So this part is much more unrealistic for the show, but it's just something cool I think could have happened. That instead of Josh going to Santos, we have Josh go find Sam and get Sam to run. And anytime we had a scene with Santos, it was really just, Sam, because, he was a congressman, Santos was a congressman, it works out. But my point is that this would have been really cool because it would have been a great way to bring Sam back without undoing his character arc and to have everything stay intact. Sam is just a character that, cares about public service, and to have him come back and run like the show intended him to. I mean, heck, even the president said, Sam, you're going to run for president one day. Like, he says that. And so it would have been so relieving to see that happen, and have Josh run that campaign would have been epic. I feel like we were cheated out of Sam, and it hurts to see that happen. So yeah. I really wish that happened. To be honest, I really wish that all that had happened, but I understand that it would have taken a lot of work to get Rob Lowe back. I just really liked his character, and I wish they had been taken care of better. But in the end, those first 4 seasons of West Wing are some of my favorite. I think those 4 seasons overall are probably better in those 4 seasons. You could argue season 7 is really good too. I just feel like those 4 are the most coexisting seasons of all. And they did a really good job with that. So, I really liked Sam. I really liked how he handled it all. And I just wish some things had been different. Alright, enough of that. Let's go to CJ Craig.
I'm assigning an intern from the press office to that website. They're going to check it every night before they go home. If they discover you've been there, I'm going to shove a motherboard so far up your ass. What?
Well, technically, I outrank you.
So far up your ass! Okay?
CJ Craig is awesome. She's a character that just makes me laugh when I see her. She's the quick banter one, and I love her interactions with the press. She really does a good job in handling those types of situations, and I love her ability to just slap Toby or Josh around whenever they do something stupid. I love her situations with her father. It's a really good way of drawing you in and making you care for her more. A lot of people who have that same kind of similar problem probably really relate to it, and I feel like this show treats it pretty realistically. I think CJ is just a really good character, and she is very unique. Some of my favorite interactions with CJ are with her and Sam, actually, because if you think about it, these two, at least Sam was going to be, were brought up to be leaders of the White House. Sam was going to run for president, and CJ was going to be made the chief of staff to Jed. These two start off as rookies, and at least were going to be the big honchos towards the end. I kind of like their connections and how CJ has a lot of growth in the show. Like I said before, I think Danny is great in how he brings her back to like a normal life, and I really just enjoy that arc. I think it was really well done. And one thing I liked about CJ that I didn't think about really until I started writing this is that CJ is different from every other senior staff member. I couldn't think of why until now. CJ is the only person to have never really wanted to get into politics. Unlike Sam or Josh, CJ has a sense of duty, but she doesn't feel the need to do it through politics, and I really like that about her. That's why it feels fulfilling when she is happy and that she's leaving the White House. I don't have a lot more to say about her than that, but like you can tell that CJ is someone who wants to, help the world in her own way. And politics was just one way she did that, but it isn't something she really had to do. And it felt really nice to have that about her, to just know that about her. I could talk about how I thought giving her the chief of staff position was a little weird and more for like TV purposes. But I think when she gets into the groove of it, past once Josh leaves, she does a good job. I do like seeing her kind of like being protective of the Secretary of State position and how she and Toby clash. Because you can obviously tell that Toby is jealous that she gets it. And you can even see that with Josh. She clashes with Josh too a little bit when she's figuring out. But Josh does a great job in how he respectfully leaves. And I really like how Toby and her react to each other. How they're like basically the last two honchos who are there with the president. They're the last president's resort. And it's actually kind of crazy. I would have never guessed that by the end, CJ was the last person who would be standing with the president from the beginning to the end. I would have never guessed that. Which we'll talk about that with Leo a little bit, but it's kind of cool that she gets to claim that role.
You're a good deputy, Sam.
What do you mean?
That?
You won money on football today, didn't you?
Yeah, but I mean it anyway.
Toby Ziegler is the one person in the show who was in every season that I feel like they didn't know what to do with. You see towards the end of the show, the writers had to start preparing for the next presidency, so they started filling out their roles. They wanted Josh to be the next chief of staff. They wanted Donna to help run the campaign. They wanted Leo to be the VP. CJ to be the current chief of staff, but Toby was kind of left in the air. Once CJ takes the chief of staff position, I feel like they just weren't sure what to do. I've heard some people say that Toby deserved to be chief of staff, but I honestly disagree. Toby isn't a political advisor, he's a writer. In fact, they make a point of showing us this when they have that little arc with Josh and they have Toby take up some of his responsibilities. And we see that he just isn't as good as this as Josh is. The point I'm trying to make is that Toby is kind of just a weirdly made character towards the end of the show. I really love how he is handled in the beginning. He bounces off great with Josh and Sam. I love how he treats CJ like a sister. And like I said before, those moments with him crying with her about his brother killing himself was really emotional to me. The show has a lot of great moments with him, and I love how out of everyone, he never gets off track of why they're here. Toby never forgets that they are here to do a job, that it's not all about politics, it's about serving the people and doing what is needed. Toby is a character of conviction, and I love him for it. He is undeniably the most unique character in the show, and I honestly don't blame them for messing him up in the later season. In the show, they kind of changed things up, and they had it where Toby leaked classified information to save some pilots, which is kind of something I could see him doing. But I feel like the more realistic thing than him just doing it himself would have been him really fighting the president against it rather than just doing it himself. Toby, although he is like an egotistical person, he does respect the president. And I think it was a little unrealistic for him to just ignore the president and do what he thought was right. Because there's a point where the president's basically saying, like, I guess this was inevitable. But I never really saw it like that. And so it was a little weird for me. I would have done it a little differently. I would have probably had him focus the last season of him just getting something done. I would have had him realize that after Josh left, it was up to him and CJ to get these things done. And I would like to see him really work for something. Like, we've seen him push hard, but now he has to do it by himself. And I think having a whole season of Toby just struggling, clawing his way, breaking through all this struggle to get one last big thing done. One big issue that he and CJ can push together. While CJ and the president are focused on Kazakhstan, it's up to Toby to run the country pretty much. It's up to Tony. It's up to Toby to get this thing done. To me, that would have been great for Toby, and it would have been a final finishing thing for when the president ends. Toby and CJ are standing by his side as his final advisors. I understand why they did it the way they did, but I personally think the other way would have been a little better for me. Although I don't think this ending was perfect, I still love Toby throughout his show. He has some of the best speeches, and it's really heartwarming to see him fight for causes he believes in, like the fight for Social Security. These episodes where it's just Toby fighting for what he believes in are the episodes I live for, and I personally could watch them over and over again.
Hi.
Hi.
Who are you?
I'm Donna Moss. Who are you?
I'm Josh Lyman.
Ah.
Yes.
I'm your new assistant.
Did I have an old assistant?
Maybe not.
Donna Moss is pretty funny. Serious, Donna goes from assistant to becoming a great political advisor over the course of 7 seasons, and while I do think she has a few stumbling blocks, I just love how she handles herself throughout the show. She is someone who doesn't know what she wants to do, and her arc is realizing that this is something she's really good at and enjoys. It's really interesting when comparing her to a character like CJ, who kind of got dragged into politics, while Donna is a character who dragged herself into politics. I enjoy that. I do think sometimes her interactions with Josh were a little unrealistic, but I'll flesh that out more when I talk about Josh. In the end, I don't have a lot to say about her. I think she's a character that was well developed and just good throughout the show, and had some legit funny lines.
Babysitter, right? No, what the hell's the matter with you, dog? This is Miss Craig. She's the White House press secretary and senior counselor to the president. And if she wasn't, she would still be Miss Craig. I don't mind you not respecting people. I mind you doing it out loud. I mind you doing it in this building.
Charlie Young is an awesome character that Dual Hill kills at. He portrays his character so well, and I would not have casted this any other way. He never feels out of place, and his entire character arc is done really well. I enjoy the scenes with Charlie and the president. I feel like they do a good job in showing that Charlie is about people. He's someone who really focuses on helping the people whenever he can. That's why he doesn't help the new president when Zoe gets kidnapped, or CJ out when she needs a new big brother for this kid. Charlie is someone who will help people because he didn't have enough people to help him when he was younger. When it comes to Charlie's relationship with Zoe, I actually liked it. I thought it was believable, and I liked how in season 1 it leads to the white supremacy stuff. I think the show handled it all pretty well until season 4. Here I think we fell a bit off track, like I said before. I don't think it was completely realistic for Charlie to go after Zoe so persistently. And the love triangle with Zoe and Charlie. We're not even talking about that. Nope, not talking about Pompous Asshole. But I do like how Zoe and him finish a growing relationship by the end of the show. And I think it was pretty well done. I like how they don't have him propose, but I do like how they kind of tell us that he's going to. It really solidifies that Charlie has grown up and is ready to start his life. I just like Charlie. I don't really have much more to say about that. I just think he's a good guy in the show and he does a great job in it. I think he's persistent. I think he's awesome, and I just really enjoy his character in the show.
Gracias, tibiago domine. Yes, I lied. It was a sin. I've committed many sins. Have I displeased you, you feckless thug? 3.8 million new jobs, that wasn't good. Bailed out Mexico, increased foreign trade, 30 million new acres of land for conservation. Put Mendoza on the bench. We're not fighting a war. I've raised 3 children. That's not enough to buy me out of the doghouse. Hey, Kratom Adeo Pio, Adeo Justo, Adeo Shito, Cruciatos in Cruciam. Tuis in terra servos nuntias fui, officium perfecce. Cruciatos in Cruciam, Eas in Cruciam. You get Heinz.
Alright guys, we're here. We're at Jed Bartlett. Jed Bartlett is probably the one character in the show I can say nothing negative about. Partly because I just don't think there's any criticisms I could say against him that could stick. It's kind of like the opposite of Will Bailey. Every criticism I have on the president has a but following it. I think he handled the situation with MS immaturely, but then again, that's his personality and his ego problem. Anything I could say that feel like that justifies it in a reasonable way, it just doesn't work out, you know? So yeah, I'm not going to say anything negative about him. Jed Bartlett is amazing in the show. He is the perfect embodiment of what I think a president should be. I think that this is the closest you could be to being a perfect president in a realistic world. Negating the policies he fights for and all that, I'm talking about a man whose sole intention is to do good. I love his little history bands with the staff and his relationship with Leo. Man, those two are so much fun when they're together, and I love seeing them interact. Some of my favorite parts in the show are when Leo is just telling the president to get a grip. In fact, my favorite episode in the show is Let Bartlett Be Bartlett. In this episode, we see Jed Bartlett make decisions and send his staff to do a bunch of things, but he doesn't give any real incentive to go all the way. We have kind of seen this behavior throughout the first season, but this episode fleshes it out a lot. We see Sam try to help gays in the military, we see Josh trying to get people onto the FEC, and how Leo is trying to get the president on board on a bunch of things, but the president isn't going for it. And then a piece of paper. This piece of paper that Mandy wrote basically calls out the White House, specifically the president, on them not doing things. And Jed, who is stuck in his own thoughts, only gets annoyed with it and calls it lies. But Leo calls him out on it. And we see Jed faced with the reality that he got complacent. This season and season 5 are the only 2 times that the president gets complacent. And both times it's either Leo or Abby who call him out. Because these are the only 2 people who have authority to call him out. And I love it. This episode shows them regain their fire, and it is only I admire it so much. Jed Bartlett is a great character and one of the main reasons why the show is the way it is. This show would not be as good if the president wasn't as good as he is. I really enjoy the first episode of the entire show because we don't see the president for the entire episode until the very end. Only to the end do we see the president, but we hear about him a lot. We hear about this guy who wants to fire Josh Lyman, this guy who kind of got silly and ran his bike into a tree. But we are told about him in this almost like angelical way. He is brought up to a very high standard, and we see the people who work for him. We see Josh, Toby, CJ, Leo, Sam, and at one point we see CJ, Toby, and Josh all arguing with these Christians, and then the president just walks in, and he dissolves a situation that the entire episode has been about in like a minute. In 1 minute, he solves the problem this entire episode has been about. And I love it. The president is supposed to be powerful, and Jed Bartlett is really powerful in the show. And that's why he works. Because he embodies power. And that is needed when making a show about the president. Well, now we're on to Leo McGarry.
Of trying to get myself excited about a candidate who can speak in complete sentences. Of setting the bar so low, I can hardly look at it. They say a good man can't get elected president. I don't believe that, do you?
You think I'm that man?
Yes.
Doesn't it matter that I'm not as sure?
Nah. Act as if ye have faith, and faith shall be given to you. Put another way, fake it till you make it. You did good tonight.
Yeah.
This is the time of Jed Bartlett, old friend. You're gonna open your mouth and lift houses off.
Leo was so close to being my favorite character in this show, and I can definitely say that he's the most wholesome character in the show. I just don't have any words to truly describe him. I love him. He's hilarious and passionate, and I feel like he was the best mentor to Josh that anyone could have asked for. Leo is someone who is so undeniably good that everyone's willing to do anything for him. Heck, the first time we see Sam defy an order from Leo is when he writes a statement for the president defending him. This guy, no matter what, will defend his friend. As he said, I take a bullet for the president, he doesn't take one for me. I love that quote. I don't have too much to say about Leo if I'm being honest, because I think he's nearly perfect. There are only two things that I think the show got wrong. The first one is that I think they should have just kept Leo as chief of staff throughout the entire show. This is something I felt like they did just for TV purposes, but honestly, it kind of just feels a little weird out of place. I love how CJ reacts to becoming the chief of staff, but it kind of took a blow to Leo for me. And the second is, I wish he didn't run for vice president with Santos. I really like the line where he says, I found my guy, when Josh tells him to go with him, and he's just like, nah, I found my guy. And they kind of like backtrack on that, and I don't know why. And so I wish they hadn't done that, because I feel like Leo got into the White House for his friend, and to have this, because he knew that his friend was made for good, big things. But we don't, I just wish he didn't go for the DNC route. But like, Leo is such a heartwarming character, because in all honesty, Leo feels like a failure to himself, I think. Because we see Leo throughout the show, he calls himself a drunk, and he says all these things. He was addicted to pills. We see that Leo has had a hard past, but he has turned that into a resolve to being the best person he can be now. But like, we see it even when Leo talks to Jed Bartlett about running for president. Leo, like, he doesn't even realize that he technically had a better chance of being president than Jed. But Leo didn't run for president. Why? Because Leo believes that a good man should run for president. Just think about it for a second. He tells Jed that they say a good man can't run for president or get elected. And he's like, and I'd like to prove them wrong. And that was right after Jed said, you're more of a player in the party than I am. It just tells us that Leo doesn't think well of himself. And every time someone tries to defend him over the president, he says no. he says no, because he feels like he's not worth it compared to Jed. And I think that's really powerful to me, and it's really special to me. It's just really special to me to hear that. Leo is the most wholesome character in this whole show, and I think he's just a well-written, one of the most well-written, in my opinion. He's just really well. Yeah, that kind of went off the rails there, but now we're on the final one, guys.
Do you have any idea how much noise Air Force One makes when it lands in Eau Claire, Wisconsin? We're gonna have a party, Congressman. You should come. It's gonna be great. And when the watermelon's done, right in town square, right in the band gazebo. You guys got a band gazebo?
Josh.
Doesn't matter. We'll build one. Right in the band gazebo. That's where the president's gonna drape his arm around the shoulder of some assistant DA we like. And you should have your camera with you. You should get a picture of that, because that's gonna be the moment you're finished in Democratic politics. President Bartlett's a good man. He's got a good heart. He doesn't hold a grudge. That's what he pays me for.
Josh Lyman is my favorite character in the show, hands down. Now, this isn't just because my name is Josh too, although that helped. No, Josh is my favorite character in the show because he has my favorite arc. The arc of finding someone to be your guy. One of my favorite scenes with Josh is when he and the president are talking, and the president says this.
You're not willing to toss it overboard to win. You're willing to toss it overboard to avoid disappointing Leo. You know what the difference is between you and me? I want to be the guy. You want to be the guy counts on.
I love this so much because it's the first time we in the show hear someone say what Josh is striving for. But this is important to say out loud because Josh needs to know what he's striving for. Josh needs to know his goal. And this was the first time I heard it and was like, oh, okay. Josh is now going to be the focus of the show. Because after Sam leaves kind of like the show, you can kind of tell they started to focus more on Josh and making him the main character to an extent. Because they knew, all right, Sam's not going to be here. Let's focus on Josh because Josh is the guy who's going to be running the show 3 seasons from now. So yeah, I think they once they figured out what they wanted with Josh, they just focused on it and they did great. And Josh needed to know that. He needed to know what his goal was. And because of this, he's able to go find someone he believes to be president. And Josh doesn't just leave the president hanging. You can tell that it took a lot out of him to do this. He even had doubts in the first beginning of it. Josh spends his whole time on the show focused on making the people he wants proud. First it was Hoynes, but then he left Hoynes because he realized Hoynes was focused on winning. So then he goes to Leo and Jed, who realizes that they're his true mentors. Everything he wants to be are in these two guys, and eventually he finds Santos. But unlike Hoynes and Jed or Leo, Josh leaves them to teach Santos. Every time Josh has left someone, it's so he can find someone who can teach him more. But this time, when he leaves them, he leaves like Leo, a guy he finds to be a father. He leaves him for Santos because he believes he can make Santos president. He believes he can make a good man president. And this is such a good part of this show. This is why you care for Santos, because you have been told that Josh has been learning all this, and you've been told that only a good man should run for president, basically. You've been told that despite all odds, a good man should be president, and we got one. But we were kind of told that like Jed is like a diamond in the rough, and we'll never find someone like him again who will get elected realistically. But Josh finds someone, and now you feel an attachment to Santos because Josh has an attachment to Santos. Santos is Josh's Jed. And that is what is important. He would have become someone more focused on winning on politics than someone trying to do good if Josh had, stayed with Hoynes. Josh learns over the show from winning to winning with a purpose. Josh has a purpose and strives to do what he can to do that. And that is why I'm so happy to see him turn Hoynes down to run his campaign. Seeing him do that brought me so much joy. You guys have no idea. And then I loved it when he turns Will down. It showed that he's so much wiser. Like Josh is growing as a person. He wasn't going to settle for less, and he almost did. But then Matt Santos reminds him of all the people. Jesus, this is a good show. The way Josh affects Donna, like, they're awesome together. I love how Josh and her interact. I was happy when they got together. I think the show had been aiming for that for a long time and was happy when it settled on it. I like how Josh learns to control his temper through Donna. In the earlier seasons, we can see that Josh can get very angry quickly. But once he puts her on the trip to the Middle East with Fitz and she begins to learn more, you see him respect her more, which I thought was important to do. Characters like Amy Gardner, while are really fun to see Josh with, don't have the same connection with Josh as Donna does. These two have been together for like 8 years now. Amy is pretty similar to Josh, and Joey Lucas, well, that would have been cute, but just wouldn't have worked out. These two characters are fun to see interact with him, and Donna is the only one I felt truly was right for Josh. It took around 3 watchings for that to finally settle in, but I think it's right in the end. I also enjoy Josh's arc with Leo and the president, where they don't trust him. If you don't remember, Josh does this big screw up that makes everyone hate him pretty much, and in doing so, Leo and the president take away some of Josh's responsibilities. This arc was very important because it helps the audience kind of create some relatability with him, and they even brought Angela in, which is a character that's meant to be looked upon negatively. Angela is kind of screwed because she's meant to be looked at in a negative light. She's meant to replace Josh to an extent, and since we like Josh, we don't like Angela. That's pretty much how it goes. Angela's just a sign or a symbol that they don't trust Josh. But then we see him learn. We see him learn to maybe dial it back a little bit while keeping the pressure on. And this is really important because it gets the wheels right back on track. When the government is shut down and the president brings Josh back into the room, I love how the situation basically gets solved once Josh enters back. And I gotta say, that whole scene where Josh and the president and Angela, they go to the speaker's office, they walk, and throughout the entire thing, Angela's like, this is a mistake, this is a mistake, this is a mistake. Josh is like, nah, I got this. And it shows why Josh is so much better at this than Angela. And it was so satisfying to see that. Through it all, Josh is a great character. He's my favorite character of this whole show. And he is the most reliable character, I feel like, for the audience to really attach himself to. Because he's the one, that's whole goal of the show is just to really make you care about him. This show has been grooming him up for this, and it did it really well. I was just really happy with his conclusion in the show, and actor Bradley Whitford, he killed it. There's no one else, I think, who could have done this as well. And it kind of sucks I don't see him in more things, so it is pretty exciting to see him pop up in different shows, like as a main character's dad or an old politician. So I appreciate that. But in the end, Josh is like the perfect character in this show, because even though he has ups and downs, he is by far the one character that just makes me happy to watch this show. I hope you see now that the characters in the show, whether you like some or don't, they all have depth and a purpose to them. They all have soul in them, all passion. These characters need to have these things to be good. And that's why when you watch this show, you understand the feelings and why you care so much about them. These characters aren't just people written on a screen. Compare these characters to someone like Rey or Kylo Ren. You know, these characters have so much more depth and love put into them than those two do, because those two are written in a way for a specific agenda, while these two are written for reality and for compassion, and that is why they're so much better. These characters have so much love put into them. Like, this show needs well-developed characters, otherwise it won't do well. The reason why Kylo Ren is liked more than anyone else in the sequel trilogy is because he's the only person in that show that has a consistent arc. He's the only one that feels like he's had a good character arc and developed and depth into him. Everyone else doesn't feel like that. Now imagine if everyone had 10 times more character arc feeling than Kylo Ren. That's what this show has. Everyone is way out of the league when it comes to that. This show, for good and bad, rotates through a lot of characters in the end. But that's what makes it special, is the characters. I love this show and everything about it because the world that these characters have made is a world I would love to live in.